We are gathered with the team of folks who help lead the transition from our school-based work to our direct-to-youth digital strategy. So this was the team that came on board following the strategic planning work we did in 2015, when we were really beginning to think of ourselves as a movement. I want to start with you, Bobby, because you were the first person who came on board. You helped develop the strategy as a volunteer. What was it that brought you to Peace First, and what was the work that you did?
I saw all these just really interesting things that Peace First was doing, and it just had this real clear deep belief in the power of young people in ways that I hadn't seen before. I was really hungry for a deeper sense of meaning and purpose in the work that I was doing. My job was to really market and help build a brand. I remember my first job description. It literally had feed the good of young people in my job description. And it was just another sign that I was doing the right thing.
Raul, you were tasked with taking, 20 years of curriculum that was geared for schools, for pre-K to 8th grade, and building a digital learning journey from that.
We ended up putting together a bunch of just Google Forms, I think it was, so that young people were able to go through each stage of the challenge, and we ended up getting better numbers than we initially thought. So that first group of challengers was just a fantastic group of people with some of the most amazing projects that we still I still see that sometimes make some of the stories that are shown in the Peace First social media.
Bobby, one of your jobs was to help Peace First find its voice, particularly moving from a voice that was speaking to adults to talk to young people, particularly elementary school students, to one that was talking directly to young people. What do you remember about that process of creating that voice and thinking about that?
Peace First needed to feel like it was a brand of young people talking to other young people, in that we were allies in that, but essentially if this was going to be a youth movement, it needed to feel like it was coming from the heart and the spirit of young people.
And Bonnie, you had the responsibility of convincing some of those hard to convince folks, whether it's foundations, individuals. What was that process like, trying to build these campaigns, trying to raise these resources?
Being in front of executive directors at foundations or the head of CSR at X brand, not needing to be convinced and not really understanding what embracing this rallying cry to support the movement and the vision of young people and being in service to them. What surprised me so often in the years I was with Peace First is how difficult that was. How people gave lip service to the understanding of that. I remember being quite surprised coming off lots of calls going, really? That was your question? With some lovely surprises, right? And wished there had been more.
Meredith, we had Raul building the platform, Bobby telling the story, Bonnie raising money. You were building the business.
People really wanted us to speak a language and we were trying to build a different vocabulary. And I think that was the hardest part. We were in the middle. We were at the beginning of this wave that we knew was coming, but a lot of people didn't know it was coming or didn't know what it would mean if it did. I was really hard on myself trying to figure out why couldn't I get the model right? Why couldn't I get the numbers right? And it's only, I think now in retrospect, when I was like, oh, that was never going to happen. We were too far ahead of the curve for the numbers to make sense. Transition from a very clear, commodity that was school-based programming for young people delivered by adults. Everyone knew what that was. They knew how to measure it. They knew how to quantify it. They knew how to put a cost to it. And then we were like, hey, we are going to build something. Young people are going to take it over. We're going to send them some real live cash. Could we have your money to do that? And people were like,
So I'm here with part of the original crew who helped build our Fellow in Residence program, with Fish Dark, who helped design and create the program and was its founder and originator. How this idea for a Fellow in Residence program as it is originated.
Peace First was one of the few organizations that I really trusted. Raul, who was leading our programs at the time, reached out to me with an offer to join the team. And as we were talking about it, it became clear that it was so important to both of us. I didn't just join the team as someone who was going to be doing entry-level program work, although that was what I was going to be doing. But the idea was that I could bring the perspective of a young social change leader and make sure that all the decisions we made were centered around this idea of what do young people who are trying to make a difference. The process of creation for the Fellow in Residence program was basically just one of endless conversations, right? Either with young people who are on the ground doing social change work and trying to understand what it would look like for them to sort of work full-time mobilizing others and what they would want from that opportunity, and then talking to folks at partners that we had like Teach for All, Ashoka, and Civicus that ran fellowship programs and understand what is it that makes your program work.
What sticks with you? The stories, the people, the projects?
One of the most proudest things that I did was create this youth social justice program for young Black activists, where we kind of, off the back of what was going on in the US in the summer of 2020, developed and designed a social justice program that supported young Black leaders across both the US and Europe. Being given the space in all of our programming for young people to like challenge ideas and challenge common perspectives, and being given the space to do that, I think is just like a moment that was just like it's so great that we had that.
I feel like the other fellows really have been lifelong friends to me. Like I think it's one of the parts of the role that I wasn't expecting.
COVID and what happened during COVID. Like it was a time for the world to pause, yet it was time for Peace First to run. For us, it was an opportunity to reach to more young people and offer them the support they need.
We knew we weren't looking for your traditional sort of entry-level nonprofit worker. We were looking for movement builders, people who had this capacity to inspire, and people who had this deep desire not just to do good, but to really make some radical change in the way the world saw young people and what young people were able to do. The trust we built there was what enabled us to not just pull off this thing that no one thought a bunch of 23-year-olds could pull off, but actually grow this movement of young people beyond what we'd seen before in terms of, volume of young people going through the Peace First Challenge.
What advice do you have about the fellowship from your experiences?
Recognize that there's always going to be like tensions and exhaustion in your work, but also understanding that's like part and parcel of what you do. And like sometimes, so a thing that I've learned over the last year is the phrase "fail better." So when things don't work out for you, it's only a form of learning for yourself.
Just trusting the process. It's like similarly to understanding how you work out in a gym. Like you don't get your body goal in a day. You get it after you continuously, persistently go to the gym and do it. In this entire process, you need to trust yourself and the team to get to what you wanted to, and just to understanding and keep realizing the purpose of why you are here and who you want to become.
People don't do hard things just for fun. And so I think if you believe in something and you know that it's an uphill battle, but you believe that it's right, then you're probably right.
Don't wait. Have a bias for action, and listen well to the people around you.
Thank you for creating this chapter of an organization that continues to endure And thank you for being you.
The drive of Peace First to make sure everyone in the corner of this world, anyone, regardless of their situation, regardless of their status, has access to tools that could help them create impact.